Yeah, thank you so much for taking this time to talk with us and share your experience and your life and your
Well, it was like
history
a blast out of the past when you contacted me to say that you were doing a show in honor of the 30th year of Mariposa. I'm like, what? How did that come about? So it's kind of cool. There were all these evolutions happening at Naropa. You know, there was the development of a BFA program, and then there was the development of an MFA theater program, and so yeah, I wasn't really focused anymore on communities. And I said I left the collective. It must have been about 98, something like that.
Okay. Yeah. So you were just about 4 years participating in it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, what we started in 95? What was
94.
94. Okay. And very soon after that, we went to Jurassic. Carol and Diane and I got a residency at the Jurassic Artist Residency south of San Francisco. That was a big deal.
Yeah, I read about that in Diane's thesis.
Yeah, that was kind of really helped us kind of feel that we were collaborating on something. I guess each of us was working on a piece, I think. I remember I was starting to do Naked Face, which I can't remember. So that must have been, Naked Face must have been 96 at Bamoka. Yeah, we did it like every Wednesday and Saturday or something in an art installation. It was an installation piece.
Wow.
So there was an installation by Sherry Wiggins, and in collaboration with some language that was written on the wall, poetry language was written on the wall by, what was her name? I'll think of it in a minute. And then Mariposa, we did Naked Face there, which was a group piece. So we inhabited that installation, which was based upon, I think, fire, water, air, and earth, or something like that. I have photographs of that. And it went on for like, I don't know, 6 weeks or something.
Nice.
So we'd show up Friday afternoon and Saturday mornings or something at Bamoka, and people would walk through, you know, happenstance. It was very site-specific kind of thing. It wasn't, there may have been advertisement. I don't remember too clearly. 20 years ago.
That's really neat.
Yeah, it was cool. I liked that piece. It was edgy.
Yeah, it's neat to have the opportunity to do something over a long period of time like that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's and really it wasn't a performance-based. It was, you know, site-specific. So sometimes 2 or 3 people would show up, sometimes 1 or 2, sometimes 7 or 8, and one woman came, and a friend of mine came who was a painter, artist, and she sat with a notebook and drew the whole time she was there, and that was kind of cool. Well, I was born in Chicago, Illinois in 1938. And we moved around some as a family, and I went to high school in New Jersey, Princeton, New Jersey, and went to Mount Holyoke College. And then the woman who taught dance at Mount Holyoke College, her name was Helen Priest Rogers, and she was a Graham, she performed with Graham, I guess, and then was teaching at Mount Holyoke. And she got me interested in going to Connecticut College for the American Dance Festival in the summer of 1960. And that really solidified my involvement in dance. So I moved to New York. My family supported me and took classes. And then in 1963, I joined the Cunningham Dance Company.
And how did that come about?
Well, the summer of 1960 at Connecticut College, I studied with Merce, and I was just blown away by his classroom work, and it was so exciting and stimulating to me. So I just continued studying with him when I went to New York, whenever it was available, as well as doing other modern dance and ballet classes here and there, whatever one did in those days. And let's see, how did it come about? Oh, okay. So there was a lot of effort put into creating enough financial support for Merce to do a Broadway season. And my husband at the time, Lou Lloyd, was involved in that work of raising money through they'd create a foundation of contemporary performance art. So there's a whole history there and books and things about that. Mm. And so this Broadway season would be 1962. Yeah. And I was invited to join in the company to be an augmentation of one of his pieces called Atlas. And I had just discovered I was pregnant. And I told Merce, and I said, this performance was to happen in March. This was January. And I said, I'm not going to show that much, so I can probably just do it. It was just this one piece, augmenting this one aspect of the piece for the Broadway. He said, fine, okay. So I started learning the piece with Shireen Blair, who was in the company, and then the newspapers went on strike, and it became very evident that there was no point in spending the money to do a Broadway show when they couldn't advertise. So the whole situation was stopped. Mm. And then there were gradually people leaving the company, and in the spring of 63, I had the baby in January of to September of 62, and the spring of 63, Merce invited me to join the company.
Well, new mama.
Yeah.
Dancing with Merce Cunningham. Wow.
Yep. Yeah, it was intense. It was very rugged. And,
how did you do that?
Well, my husband at the time, Lou Lloyd, was extremely willing to let me do that and participate in taking care of the baby. And he also became the business manager, had become the business manager of the company. So we were like this family doing this thing. Mm. And so I would go on tour and he would take over.
Wow.
And then that money that was going to go for the New York season was used to support a world tour in 1964. Yeah, this is the whole chapter on the Cunningham life.
So you were with him for 5 years?
Yeah.
And then what
I left the company in 68. I'd had enough. It was getting I'd also started working with Yvonne. And I was, I think, much more excited, and it was much more interesting to me than just the ongoing repertory. The touring situation was really difficult for me, and the company dynamics, I wasn't interested in them anymore. And so I left after the South American tour in 1968. and started working a lot more with the Judson group.
How did you get connected with them?
Through Yvonne. So Yvonne invited me to do I can't remember the name of that piece. It's not Continuous Project. It was before that. Anyway, it was one of her pieces in '66 when I was still in the Cunningham Company.
Wow, that's really early. I didn't even realize.
Yeah. So I had already started doing that, and she became a real mentor for me. And we hung out a lot, and you know, the work she was doing was what gradually became what was called the Grand Union, which was a very experimental, experiential, open improvisation world with a bunch of really high-end committed folk, you know. So we show up for these performances all the time with no rehearsal, no plan, you know. But there was enough commonality and vocabulary, and I don't know, we did it. It was extraordinary for me. It was very, I call Merce Cunningham and John Cage my art fathers, and the Grand Union is my art mother. And it was really powerful for me.
And so how long were you involved in that?
Till it ended. It came to an end. So I left New York in... So the first summer of Mariposa was '74, and I was invited out here to teach.
Okay.
And then...
For a summer program?
Summer program, and then came back to New York and got the invitation from the founder, Trompa Rinpoche, if I would design the dance program. So I came out in the summer of '75, and we worked on the designing of the dance program. And then I went back to New York in the fall of '75 and left to come out here and begin that program starting January '76. And I think the last program of the last performance of the Grand Union was '76, somewhere. I think it was Missoula, Montana, if my memory's a little shaky. But I would, you know, we didn't have any preparation. We just show up. So we just kept going for quite a while, but it got pretty, what can I say? The group dynamic situation got difficult to keep going. And people were changing and evolving like we do. And so we just came to an end.
And you just naturally stepped into your next phase of life.
Other people did too, you know. Yeah, I was here by then. I was here in Boulder by that time.
Oh, I read that you did some work with Steve Paxton too. That was interesting.
Well, he was in the Grand Union.
Yeah.
And he was in the Cunningham Company.
Oh, he was a Cunningham dancer. Did not know that. So you knew each other.
Yeah, our lives were completely entwined all through that period. I was in the very first contact gathering in, what was it, '72 or something? And we did there's a whole clip of me. It's really mind-blowing to look at it because it was at the Weber Gallery. It's on YouTube. And it's fascinating to see how different I am in that work than I was with the Cunningham Company.
I would imagine.
Yeah, '72. So he was beginning to establish Contact Improv, and that group of people were the early sort of seminal collaborators with him. You know, and of course there are other videos of Contact out there. Did you do Contact? Yeah. Yeah, so I'm in one of those early videos. Shoot, maybe it's one of the early ones.
Okay.
We did, the Grand Union did a residency at Oberlin, a month-long residency, and Steve was doing a lot of research. This might have been in '72 also on contact, and then he had a men's group there and did a piece called Magnesium, which is written about a lot. So
yes, have there been other influential artists that have inspired you throughout?
well, you know, the whole period of time I was in New York in this very heightened, amazing, creative time where everybody was experimenting and doing stuff and managing to survive. I mean, it was extremely white, of course, and people were privileged enough to be able to do it in whatever way they did it. But it was very atmospherically, you know, I was being trained by the atmosphere as much as I was. At that point, I wasn't doing any training. I stopped training pretty much when I left Merce. I was just doing improv.
Mm-hmm.
And just making little pieces and work and working, collaborating with people. And, you know, it was quite something, living in Soho and lofts, and, you know, it was very dynamic. 112 Green Street, I worked at food restaurant, and there's a great movie of that. You know, it was really potent for me that time. But I also burned out on it. I was exhausted, and it was without a lot of ground, not a lot of stability. And so the invitation to come out here, it was pretty easy for me to say yes. I had had enough of New York.
So are you still involved with Naropa?
No.
Not at all.
No, I retired in 2015.
Okay.
Yep.
So you were there for 40 years? Okay. Amazing.
Yeah, the 50th is this year. Naropa's 50th anniversary. They're having lots of plans for the 50th celebration.
Naropa's 50th anniversary. Ah.
74, 2024.
So you started the dance program when the university started, or just soon after?
Soon after. So the university, it began as an institute without accreditation or anything, and upper divisional, which meant we weren't entering freshmen and sophomores, and that gradually changed, but we began as a upper divisional college. And that was 74 and 75, and it was just a summer institute. And then the program started in 76, and they were quarter, is that what you call it? 10-week session, 10-week quarters. So there were 3 10-week sessions, winter, spring, and summer, and we were off in the fall. It was very eccentric, and it kind of slowly over the years became more traditional, and became, first there was a sophomore year added, and then finally it became 4 years, and then in sometime in the 80s we became accredited, which changed everything, of course, because we were then eligible for government financial aid, and that meant people could come. And there was a graduate school program started. You know, that's a whole other history and story.
What do you do now with yourself?
I'm retired, and it's okay. I have a very quiet life. I'm aging. I'm very interested in aging and how to make it dignified and respected. And
well, you look beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm trying to keep body and soul together. I do a little bit of private coaching in gyrotonics.
I read that you were doing Feldenkrais at one point. Do you ever do that anymore?
Mm-mm. No, all those forms, I dabbled in all of them, but didn't stick with them for whatever reason. You know, those body, mind, movement studies, forms, all of them were just completely fascinating to me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they were evolving in New York, and so a lot of the shift that was happening was from ballet to modern dance to lying around on the floor. Bonnie Cohen, you know, release technique. I studied Tai Chi for a while. I mean, all those things were really much more about body-mind. You know, Mabel Todd, somebody handed me Thinking Body, and I just devoured it, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's quite a shift. And amazing how it influenced the culture of dance.
so much.
Yeah.
In many places, not everywhere, and not every place, but it really has changed. I think even dance education through movement studies, applied kinesiology. I mean,
do you have any advice for aging dancers?
You have to meet your inner, what's it called? Language is getting so challenging. Oppression, it's your inner oppression. The inner voice that is so critical of the aging process. You have to meet that voice. It's very, it's a big project to confront it because it's so built into Western culture and into capitalism, and you know, that you have to keep going, and that there's something wrong with aging. So you have to meet that. That's what I recommend. You have to really look at it and figure it out. Each person has a journey with it, and this culture sucks around aging. But there's a lot more going on now. A lot of people are getting smarter. Internalized depression, that's the word. We are we have internal oppression around getting old. So you really, really have to meet that and befriend it and understand how it works for you and how you're going to make friends and balance out this situation that is choiceless. There's no way around it. So it's a real practice of coming to terms with that, and how aggressive you're going to be about taking care of yourself, or how kind you're going to be about taking care of yourself, and have other people around you. I have a group, we meet to just talk about getting old, and it helps. You know, it's community again.
Yeah, support.
And yeah, it's a lot of it is about becoming a real friend to yourself, and developing a little bit of lightheartedness and a little bit of sense of humor. But there are good books out there now, much more available about the journey, and yeah, ultimately it's a kind of letting go. You know, you're just not going to be the same person you used to be, and it's, I think some of my dancer friends really have a hard time. I didn't have such a hard time because I wasn't interested much in performing anymore. I had kind of let go of that when I started teaching. Teaching was my real joy, and creating syllabi and designing the program and the journey and working with students. But when I was ready to let go of that, I was exhausted too. And they were like, who are these people? The younger generation kind of overwhelmed me too. I was just, you know, they'd come in and roll around in the wintertime and roll around with all this bare flesh on the floor, and I just couldn't stand it. And history and context, I think a lot of problem with arts in this training, is that they don't get enough history and context. They don't get introduced to the lineage, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So I always felt that was really important,
Mm-hmm.
that you recognize there's a whole group of human beings historically that have chosen artistic activity, in some form or another.
Yeah.
And they've lived unusual lives and behaved in unconventional ways and still made work, whatever. That was always an interesting piece to me. Back in the 60s, it became work, which it's not art, it's work. Oh, that's interesting. My work. There's some kind of cultural need to define what you did as an artist as work. Anyway, all those are evolutionary stories, I think it really helps to begin to explore who the people were, who your teachers were, and who the people were who taught your teachers, and what their influences were, and what was going on in their life at that time, and why they did what they chose to do, Yeah. What was the art around them? Yeah. Well, that's why I think a lot of that is in Diane's dissertation, is how we came together and started talking about it and what we wanted it to be, and that it was a collaboration, and that there was a very strong commitment that if you were part of the collective, you weren't performing in every concert. You had to cycle through the responsibilities of stage management and publicity and organizational, that as a member of the collective, even though you were a choreographer or a dancer, you had to cycle through other jobs. That was one of the big things we talked about a lot, was also being able to be fallow, that you didn't have to come up with work all the time. You could have, like, the seasons of the year. There was a spring and a summer and a fall and a winter to your creative energy. And that I think there was a lot of conversation about feeling that one had to make something for the next concert, even though one wasn't inspired. And again, trying to let that evolve toward a more natural rhythm cycle of inspiration and creativity. And so that was one of the things I remember talking about.
How did you get connected with those women initially?
Naropa. It was a Naropa connection.
They were all Naropa.
Yeah. Yeah. We were all working in the Inter Arts program at Naropa, and this conversation got started, and we leaned into it. And I lived on Mariposa Street, and that was one of...
You lived on Mariposa Street. Oh.
That was where the name came from, Mariposa. Yeah.
Well, it turns out to be a really appropriate name.
It's a lovely name, butterfly.
Yeah, it's so symbolic.
Very metaphoric.
And recently I've been thinking about how, that the life cycle of a butterfly, how they, of course, are a caterpillar, and then they cocoon, and they become a butterfly. But
what the fuck happens in the cocoon?
What happens? Isn't that a mystery? The greatest mystery, right? and then they leave eggs.
Yeah,
and the whole thing starts again.
Yeah, it's outrageous. It's an outrageous.
It's really pretty extraordinary, and it feels very appropriate to this organization, to me.
Yeah.
That now there's this kind of this new batch of caterpillars coming out, and
yeah, and that was another aspect of Mariposa, was how are we going to bring new members in, and what's the process of becoming a member and expanding the circle. And we would have a lot of conversations about that. I remember having and there's some photographs somewhere of having a new membership initiation or something here. Maybe that's when Kara came in, and Jude Landsman. Do you know Jude at all?
Mm-mm.
No.
The name sounds familiar, though.
Lucian came in at one point, and I don't remember who all was a part of those early gatherings, but it slowly evolved, and as I said, I left after 3 or 4 years, partly because the dynamics were, again, the group dynamics were difficult for me. I was uncomfortable with who was there and the way they were, exerting power or manipulating the situation. I mean, it's like the cultural dynamics and the social dynamics of a collective are very challenging, and you have to have some training and skills to work with it. Mm-hmm. And we didn't really have them, but they're out there now. And that's what I would recommend, is that people get trained in group dynamics and how to work with situations that are uncomfortable or rub you the wrong way, or where people are wanting who gets to decide, who's in charge, what is it's just really important, I think, because that was where the difficulties came when we started expanding and there were more people there, and they had different motivation or different intention, actually, sometimes. But the early days were very dynamic and fun, and as I said, I think community was so important, and works in progress showings, we were really excited about that, having them 4 times a year, And
how are tell me about those works in progress showings that you did.
Well, they were extended out to the Naropa dance community and the Naropa art students, that you could, sign up, I guess, and you had a slot, and there were this guidelines of how to give and receive feedback, and
so you said you used the Liz Lerman method, but then you integrated some contemplative.
That's all in the back of that book.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure, and that was exciting to think about extending out a training in, again, proper feedback, which young emerging artists get so bent out of shape by feedback. It's so devastating for people if it's not done well. And if you went to a college where it was harsh or difficult and you were squashed because of it, a lot. So there's all that issue that comes up that you have to work with young people. The first time they get critiqued in doing a piece, they were squashed. So they're very raw, and it's hard for them to come forward. And so you have to work with people's, I want to do this, but I'm really afraid. I don't want anybody to give me feedback, but I really do. I need help. It's that edgy place in there.
Artists are sensitive anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, so you have a sheet of paper and say, okay, well, this is how we're going to do this. And I liked that. I thought that was really good. The feedback from the Naropa Contemplative Psych program had these great things like, put yourself in the artist's shoes. Don't just talk about yourself, but who is this person and what would be helpful to them,
Yeah, nice.
Because it's for the betterment of the whole community if people have healthy feedback and can continue to work on a project and stabilize the constellation or the community, Yeah.
And thanks for having me today.
Yeah.
And sharing.
Yeah, and I think when you put out information about the Mariposa Collective, I hope you'll put out some of this early material of the beginning of it, and Diane Butler and Carol McDowell and myself, and that we were the founding mothers.
We certainly will. But...
Of course. I just am amazed that it's happening, Jenny. I think it's fabulous. When you first said, wow, I hadn't thought about that. I thought it just vanished, And the fact that there was this kind of, like you're saying, there was an LLC and Betsy kept it going, and I went, whoa, far out.
Yeah.
I'm gonna.
Well, thank you. That's wonderful.